Shavua Tov, everyone. Welcome to Tillis Tell Stories for Saturday night. The title of this week's video is A Superior Scholar and True Friend. I compiled it from an issue of Wonders, a publication of Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg's Inner.org website, and supplemented it with additional facts from the Steinsaltz.org site, currently run by his son, Meni, that is Menachem Mendel Steinsaltz. Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz was born on the 3rd of Av in 1937, 1937, to secular parents. Amazing. Avram Moshe Steinsaltz, a descendant of the first Rebbe of Slonim in White Russia, and Rivka Leah Krokowitz, a descendant of the first Vorka Rebbe in Poland. When he was a teenager, and only when he was a teenager, Rabbi Adin became a Baal Tshuva. That is, someone who returns to his or her true Jewish roots. A genius from a young age. Already at 16, he began to study mathematics and physics at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And at the same time, parallel to his academic studies, he learned the oral Torah in Yeshiva Tomchei Tamimim Chabad in Lud. And he also studied in a different year in Jerusalem yeshivas, Torah Emes, also a Chabad yeshiva, and Mir, the largest by far yeshiva in Israel, and perhaps the largest anywhere, a Lithuanian yeshiva. At the young age of 24, he was offered the position of chief rabbi of Cologne, but he refused. He was concentrating on being an educator. During the decades, he established a network of experimental schools and educational institutions in Israel and the former Soviet Union. In 1991, Rabbi Steinsaltz changed his last name to Even Yisrael upon the recommendation of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Hailed by Time magazine as a once-in-a-millennium scholar, he authored over 400 books concerning every aspect of Torah, including Kabbalah and Chassidut, as well as Talmud and Bible. And although he is best known and celebrated for his monumental multi-decade project of a linear translation with commentary of the entire Babylonian Talmud, repeat again, monumental work, which he began at the age of 28 and finally completed 45 years later in 2010. Rabbi Adin Even Yisrael Steinsaltz passed away on the 17th of Av in 5780, that is in August in 2020. He was buried in the Chabad section of the ancient Har Zeitim Mount of Olives Cemetery. A close student of Rabbi Even Yisrael relates this episode with his Rav. This is what he said. During one of her pregnancies, my wife, who had juvenile diabetes, was suffering from drastic, dangerous, and uncontrolled drops in her blood sugar level. One Friday night, I met Rabbi Steinsaltz in the synagogue. "How are things going?" he asked. "Not good at all," I replied, and embarked on an enumeration of the difficult situation. Rabbi Adin asked about the doctors, and I answered that we had already tried everything. He lowered his eyes, waited a bit, looked at me with penetrating eyes and with a penetrating stare, and asked, "And are you praying?" Truthfully, his question irritated me. "Do you really believe that prayer can do something?" I responded. "Will these words of prayer truly balance our blood sugar?" Rabbi Adin turned red. After a moment, he said to me, "Look, if you don't believe in the power of prayer, then the only solution is for God Almighty to push you against the wall. He will pressure you and cause you pain until ultimately not only will you pray, you will shout, and then He will answer." Adin's answer made me feel very pressured and even a bit insulted. I began to sob uncontrollably. He looked at me with passion, blessed me with Shabbat Shalom, and whereupon I went home. amazingly, from that Shabbat day on, through the end of the pregnancy, my wife didn't have one significant glycemic drop. In other words, we were saved, and she was healthy. Rabbi Adin was very happy to hear the good news. When I thanked him profusely, he responded with a sentence that to me is immortal. Look, I don't know if I'm a Baba, a miracle worker, whose prayers are more accepted than the next person's. Anyway, I actually think that something completely different took place. When you tell a friend your troubles from the depth of your heart, from the point of your pain, God hears. And this, Rabbi Steinsaltz explained, is the explicit meaning of the verse. Then the people who feared God spoke to each other, and God listened and he heard. The original source of this is in the book of Malachi, Malachi chapter 2, verse 16, but it's very famous because it's quoted in Pirkei Avot. In chapter 3, it's the second Mishnah. That is, he continued, Rav Steinsaltz explained, the verse, you spoke, it means you spoke from the depth of your heart with a good friend, and God heard. Wow. Another beautiful application of the mitzvah of V'ahavta le'reyecha kamocha. Act in a loving way to your fellow Jew. Shavua Tov, have an outstanding week.